What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Court Vision. In today's video, I'm talking about the Knicks versus Pistons first round playoff series. This one's going to be really exciting. I think this has potential to be really entertaining and one of the more slept on series in the first round. So, without further ado, let's get into it. In the past matchups this season that these two teams have played, Pistons actually won 3 of 4, but definitely with an asterisk, right? All of those losses that the Knicks had were within 10 points, and the Knicks were missing starters. They were missing Cat in one of those games, and then they were missing both OG Anunoby and Josh Hart in another one of those losses. And the other one was, way at the beginning of the season. So hard to say if, those matchups are really indicative of how these two teams match up. I think Cade Cunningham versus Jalen Brunson is going to be such a crazy matchup in this series, right? On the season, Cade is averaging 30 and 8 versus the Knicks on 66% true shooting. He's able to get to his spots really consistently in some of these games. Mikal Bridges has been the primary assignment for Cade in these games, and he's done a fine job. But Cade, Cunningham didn't really feel him too much on any of these. He was able to get to his spots and find his shots. Maybe if Mikal Bridges locks in a little bit, gets back to the crazy defensive level we saw from him a couple years ago back in Phoenix, he can limit him a little bit, but I really doubt it. OG and Anunoby also got that matchup sometimes if Mikal was on the bench or, matching up in transition, and he was also kind of just okay. We haven't seen Cade Cunningham in the playoffs yet, but I really think he has the type of game that'll translate really well. He's a 3-level scorer with a solid, consistent mid-range game. He's able to get defenders kind of on his hip, work with them. He's also a really good three-point shooter, both off the dribble, pull-up, spot-up, whatever. I think he just has a really reliable game that will get off really well in the playoffs. On the other hand, Jalen Brunson is averaging 28 and 8 versus Detroit on 60% true shooting. And in one game, he only had 15 points. So in the other ones, he's averaging over 30. Really, really crazy stats. The playmaking off of his drives, finding shooters, getting the ball moving, finding cutters or whatever out of those drives generates so much offense for the Knicks. Not even mentioning his own, scoring ability. The Jalen Brunson thing, get into the paint, playing off 2 feet, getting his floaters up, getting his short mid-range shots, fadeaways, stuff like that. Just really effective. And in the matchups in the past, Detroit really didn't have an answer for him either. Ausar Thompson is probably going to have that matchup. Cade Cunningham was on him a little bit in some of those past games, but Cade, got into a little bit of foul trouble, with Brunson on him. And so Ausar Thompson got it in the most recent games. And I think that'll probably be the matchup going forward. Ausar is really, probably a good matchup for Brunson, all things considered. He's long, he's athletic, he's physical, but it's Jalen Brunson can kind of get wherever he wants on whoever he wants, even if, Ausar Thompson's a good defender. And then Jalen Brunson, we've seen it historically. He's in the past, last season in the Knicks playoff run, he had a crazy rise in the playoffs. I wouldn't really count him out from doing that again in this series. So both of these guys, I think, are really going to be electric, and it's going to be a crazy matchup. Think Jamal Murray versus Donovan Mitchell in the bubble, but maybe not to that level. First kind of narrative I'm really thinking about when I'm talking about this series is just both teams running a lot of pick and roll, right? They went to it really often, and neither team really defended the pick and roll well in these past matchups. For the Knicks, they were sending 2 at Cade, jumping the screens and then sending help for the roll man. But Cade was doing a pretty good job finding his roller, finding a shooter, getting the ball moving off of that attention that he drove. And then Jalen Duren, as a roll man, was pretty capable of making some reads, finding some shooters on the short roll when the help came as well. So that was a pretty effective look. And then when they didn't send the 2, if Cat was playing drop, Cade was really, really abusing that, getting downhill, getting to his spots, scoring, drawing fouls. The Pistons also were using Malik Beasley in the pick and roll sometimes when Cat was dropping, and they were really punishing it well with him as a pull-up shooter. But on the other hand, the Pistons weren't really able to defend the Knicks either. When Brunson was getting downhill in the pick and roll, they couldn't really do anything to him. Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart were both, really consistently playing drop versus the Knicks pick and roll. And Brunson was really, really just eating on that, either pulling up from three or in the mid-range or getting downhill into the paint, playmaking out of the pick and roll. Neither team really could stop each other. That's the point I'm trying to make. Karl Anthony Towns also deserves a mention, talking about the pick and roll, just because he was so effective at like making his defender hesitate kind of in the coverage. Brunson would start getting downhill and Cat would maybe linger a little bit behind on the 3-point line or whatever, and that really made his defender hesitant to commit to Jalen Brunson, which just opened up more space to him because, Cat's gravity as a shooter, anyone who's defending him is really reluctant to leave him on the pick and pop, stuff like that. There's one kind of unknown, though, considering all of this, is Mitchell Robinson. He hasn't played versus the Pistons at all this season. And when he's on the floor, we got to see how he defends the pick and roll, right? Because he's statistically a much better pick and roll defender than Cat. Cat as the primary big man defender in the pick and roll, like as the roll man defender, gives up 1.24 points per possession, which is in the bottom 10th of the league in terms of defending the pick and roll. But Mitchell Robinson actually at 0.83, which is really elite in the top third. So if Mitch is out there and he's able to defend the pick and roll much better, that will create a pretty big advantage, for New York. So that's something to watch going forward. Something I'm concerned about, though, is really the Pistons offense, right? Because the Knicks have really solid individual matchups outside of, Cat not being a good defender. Because Mikhail on Cade, and then OG on Tobias Harris, Josh Hart on Asar Thompson. Brunson's fine, kind of generally defending Tim Hardaway Jr., because Tim Hardaway Jr. is not really super threatening attacking him. The Pistons will look to get switched onto Brunson to attack him. Cade or Tobias were trying to, hunt that switch off a screen or something, and they attacked it really well. But you got to think the Knicks in the postseason will be a little more reluctant to switch it. They'll fight a little harder to keep, Hart or Mikhail or OG on Cade or Tobias or whatever, so that Brunson doesn't really get picked on as much. And then when Cade was driving, the Knicks actually did a pretty good job sending, weak side corner help. Shout out Mind the Game with LeBron. I was just watching that podcast episode earlier. The X out man, right? That's the term he used. Usually the weak side corner man coming over to help on a driver is the X out man or whatever. And the Knicks really did a good job sending that guy over to help. But I mean, it was nice at the rim. But the problem is Cade, it didn't really affect him much because most of his like downhill scoring comes in his like floater game or like his short mid-range fades, stuff like that. So having help under the rim wasn't really affecting him too much. At the end of the day, the Pistons are really going to struggle to score, based on those matchups and just their own, really poor half-court offense. They rely really heavily on their transition game. And in the playoffs, pace is slowing down. It's going to be a problem, right? They've got the fourth highest transition frequency in the league, and their half-court offensive rating is only 97.4, which is pretty poor. In the half-court, I mean, where is that offense really going to come outside of Cade, right? Because he's really the only solid creator offensively for the team. You can get, Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley running around off ball, trying to get free for threes. And, that worked fine in the past games that they were playing, but it's not like super consistent, and it's subject to 3-point variance. So if the shot's just not falling, it's not really a reliable look. They really rely a ton on Cade in their half court, right? Just to give some anecdotal evidence, right? In one of the games that they played previously in clutch time, last minute of the game, one possession game, they ran 4 flat. So for Cade, all 4 of Cade's teammates flattened down to the corners. So Cade had the isolation up top. Hardaway came up to screen so Cade could try and get the switch on Brunson, which he did in both of those possessions, and both of those possessions ended up with Cade kicking it out to Beasley for a 3-point shot in the corner. And it's good offense, but like how many times can you just say Cade go to work or Cade get a mismatch, stuff like that before it stops working, before the Knicks figure out how to defend it, right? And then if the Knicks just send the house, send 2 every time Cade touches the ball, are the Pistons really going to be able to punish that? Remains to be seen. And then, like I mentioned before, the 3-point variance with their shooters for the Pistons will also be a big question. Because in two of the games that the Pistons actually won against the Knicks, Malik Beasley went 6 for 8 from three and then 7 for 10 from three in another one. And that was really a big reason why they won two of those games. Obviously, like I just mentioned, 2 threes off of Cade Cunningham, in clutch time was the difference maker. So, if he's cold, if their other shooters are cold, the thin margins that they kind of have in their offense get even thinner. Jalen Duren's not really a scoring threat in isolation if he's not getting set up by Cade or Dennis Schroeder, like in the pick and roll or like in the dunker spot off of someone else. Tobias Harris can maybe create a little bit for himself, going to work like maybe on a mismatch, something like that, posting up. But the Knicks have been pretty okay letting him do that, isolating on OG or McHale or Josh Hart or whatever it is. And if they have to go to it consistently, I think it's not going to be a super efficient look. If he gets the mismatch on Brunson, if he gets the mismatch on, Cat or something on the perimeter, maybe he can attack that. But I don't know if it's going to be a super consistent source of offense. The Knicks, on the other hand, I think they'll be really solid offensively, right? They've got a 102 half-court offensive rating, which is 7th in the league, so pretty solid. And it all stems from like Jalen Brunson, right? He really drives the offense for the Knicks, especially, in some of these Pistons games. His drive and kick just generates so many good looks for the Knicks. When he would drive and, get 2 feet in the paint, the Pistons often had like 3-4 guys collapsing into the paint, and he was consistently, finding open shooters, initiating ball movement, finding his roller, getting opportunities for other guys to score off of him. And he's got some really solid teammates that can score off of him. Karl Anthony Towns, he'll probably be pretty effective. He's averaged 24 in the season series against the Pistons on pretty solid efficiency, on the pick and pop off of Brunson, as a roller off of Brunson, or just as a self-creator, right? He's a pretty solid post-up player, great three-point shooter, just a great second option for the Knicks in this matchup, right? And then his gravity, really pulls the big man who's guarding him out to the perimeter, which opens up offense even more. So kind of the gravity of Brunson, as a downhill threat, drawing guys into him on the paint for kickouts, and then Cat, drawing the big man away from the rim. It just creates so many opportunities for the Knicks offense, and I don't really think the Pistons have a great answer for that in terms of Cat posting up. Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart did like a good enough job, playing him very physically straight up in the post up, but Cat still got, some decent buckets, was efficient enough scoring in the post up, and he was pretty good passing it out to cutters and shooters. And then also another thing with Cat's gravity, he's really good if he has the ball in his hands, towards the top of the key, outside on the perimeter or whatever. He's really good at finding cutters, finding drivers or whatever off of that, with the big man pulled away from the rim. So Brunson and Cat as a duo just generate so much for their teammates, and they've got teammates who are really good at capitalizing, right? Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, really, really solid third and fourth options, right? Either off of, Brunson or Cat's game or whatever, they're going to have plenty of open shots. Their shooting's not necessarily going to decide the series by itself, but like they can easily win some games by themselves if they're really hot, capitalizing on all their open opportunities as shooters or attacking closeouts. Mikal had 20 a game versus the Pistons this season on over 70% true shooting, so he was really efficient, as a cutter, getting to his mid-range shots or just spotting up on the perimeter. And then OG had 16 a game on reasonable efficiency as well. He's good attacking closeouts. He's a solid shooter. And then, he can also put the ball on the floor and create for himself in isolation if he needs to, because Pistons don't really have a great defensive matchup for him size-wise, except for maybe Tobias Harris, but Tobias isn't really the world's best defender, right? The Knicks offense just has 2 guys who are able to get theirs and open up so much space for their third and fourth guy, and then they also have their third and fourth guy who are probably some of the best third and fourth guys in the league. So the Knicks offense, I really don't have any questions for them. Altogether, I mean, the Pistons are a tough team. They're really well-coached, defensive-minded. It's going to be hard for New York to score, but I just think New York's offense is too good. And then the Pistons offense just doesn't really have enough juice in my mind to win 4 of 7. If Cade goes nuclear, he can win them some games. Mitchell Robinson coming in defensively will just be a whole nother level that the Knicks can get to. So I just think the Pistons are going to struggle to score too much, and they're just not going to be able to keep up with the Knicks. My official prediction is Knicks in 6 or Knicks in 5, maybe. I'll say 6. Give the Pistons the benefit of the doubt because I really do think Cade will be good in the postseason. It'll be an entertaining 6, that's for sure. I really think the duel between Brunson and Cade will be crazy. I fully foresee like some crazy highlight tapes, coming out on like the NBA YouTube channel. Crazy duel between Cade Cunningham and Jalen Brunson combining for 90 points or whatever. They both have 40, something crazy like that. It's going to be a very entertaining series. That's all I've got for today. More videos to come, more playoff previews to come. Probably going to talk about Pacers Bucks at some point. Probably going to talk about Warriors Rockets, which I think is going to be a really good series. So, subscribe if you want to see those. And thanks for watching.